people would hear the descriptor as like Western black metal, and they would put their own image in their head of what that is, and it's usually a little bit sillier, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just something that needs to be listened to be like, okay, there is a reason for this. And with this record, I feel that way more from people.
All right, Shane, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
The drive was busy, a lot of traffic.
Oh yeah, always busy coming in.
Well, it is also the Friday before a long weekend here, so I don't know if you know that. So there's a lot of traffic on the streets for sure. A lot of people leaving town as well. But let's talk about American Gothic. I'm going to say that in like 10 years from now, you're going to look back and like, out of all the albums you've already done, this is that album, I'm sure that you've noticed this already, that changed everything. Like, a lot of people were talking about this album, got so much good response. Do you feel that as well? Like, it's different than it used to be?
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's like, as far as the band and our intents with the album, it's like the most we've ever fleshed out an idea before.
Yeah.
We definitely, before we even start writing a record at this point, we usually have a pretty clear idea of like how we want it to feel, what it's about, what it's going to look like.
Right.
And this one I think is the the most fully we've been able to develop that. So it felt good from that end. And then response wise, yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of people kind of seeming to really know what the band is now. Which is good, because I feel like people would hear the descriptor as like Western black metal, and they would put their own image in their head of what that is, and it's usually a little bit sillier, and it's just something that needs to be listened to be like, okay, there is a reason for this. And with this record, I feel that way more from people.
You mentioned something that is very true. Like this is more dark country vibe than yet another band that likes to drink beer and cover Ghost Riders in the Sky one more time.
Right.
That's, I think, a scene you want to stay away from. But we see this global appeal. You've got, dark country seems to be a bit on the rise. In metal, it's seeping in as well. We've got Me and That Man from Nergal as well now. In the metal scene more, we've got Spirit World, Vital Signs as well. And it's not just in North America. Like, what do you think makes that American Western, that classic American Western vibe, atmosphere so popular across the globe?
For us, being from where we're from, being from the Rockies and like really steeped in the West, we grew up around a lot of that history. There's still a lot of monuments and kind of even landscape-wise things you'll see that will kind of make you think of it. And if you think about, your most famous black metal bands, for example, most likely being from Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, they pull a lot from their landscape, from their history, from their mythology. And for us, it was just like a sensible thing for us to tackle with our music, where it's like we're from Colorado, we want to do that. And why I think it might be, gathering interest is because, any countries like our country or region or what have you, history that goes back any amount of time is going to be like pretty interesting the further you dive in. And I think American Western history is very, very interesting, very dark, very, so much happened in a short amount of time that was so unique to that area. And then it's become this cultural export of the United States over the years, where like Western films have been popular worldwide. That's why you had the Italian Western boom in the 60s. And I think because of that, there's like this interesting appeal to people elsewhere. Because especially when you're not from there and you're not steeped in it, it's almost more of a concept that's hard to wrap your head around. Like, what was this world like? And it's more kind of exotic and enticing in that way. And I think we've almost noticed more response in Europe lately, probably because of that. Because it's like just like the Scandinavian Nordic themed stuff. People in the States like eat that shit up. There's
the Viking markets in Kentucky now.
And they love it. And I feel like it's almost kind of an opposite effect that we've been experiencing with the band and with the rise and interest in that sort of music that, especially in Europe, it's like a very interesting thing because it's so outside of their world.
It's also, in a way, that there's also an element of danger, if you will, with black metal. And few things are more dangerous than things that happened less than 150 years ago.
Exactly.
You know, like if you talk about those Scandinavian bands that want to talk about pagan times, that's 1,000 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, if you go to the Midwest now, you can kind of still really feel it in a way. Does that make it a little bit more tangible in a way?
I think so. I have to correct you on the Midwest because we're pretty staunch up about being the Rocky Mountains. The Midwest, I can't claim them.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think so. Like you know, when you're young and you learn about these things, you're like, oh, this was 100 years ago. This was so long ago. Can't even comprehend it. But the older you get, the more that scale shrinks. You're like, this is not that far off of modern society, really. And it does make it interesting, especially when you notice the patterns that maybe repeat of incidents you read about from that time reflected to things that are happening today, and it's really not that different. It's just a different skin, a different time on like what it looks like. But I think that's what rings true the most and makes it feel like it was not that long ago. Yeah, is seeing parallels in today's society. So yeah, that probably does make it hit a little closer to home.
Now, there is always, with all subgenres, and there's a lot of them of black metal, there's always a visual element to it. You guys as well, we've seen some really artful music videos as well of you guys. That stuff is cool. It also tells us that you could build, if resources was not an issue, a really interesting live show production around this. And I'm sure that you're building what you can. But is that something that would be on your bucket list? Or because we see black metal bands that go like full blown theatrics and would do almost like a Broadway style show if they could. And then there's black metal that's like
minimal,
very minimalistic. Yeah. Where do you fall in that? Because you do have this really cool vibe in your music that not many bands have.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely somewhere in between that spectrum for sure. And some of it is just based on the means we have available.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's appealing to us as the years go on. We do flesh out the aesthetics more and more. Like I think on the record, inside the record, it's much more dialed into what it all means, what it's all supposed to be represented as. In the live show, a bit more as well.
Yeah.
You know, like we have our way we present ourselves on stage. But it's still fairly minimal, but we're kind of adding little elements.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be opposed to kind of making it more of a thing. But, something we're always hyper conscious of is not letting it slip into gimmick territory.
Yeah.
When it's too much theatrics. And again, that comes back to maybe people's expectations when they don't know the band and they hear it's like, oh, it's this cowboy metal thing. And they always expect or want or very much don't want like a folk metal style, costume kind of show, and that's that would be our worst nightmare. Is to turn into some kind of circus like that. But there's ways to do it tastefully, right?
Exactly.
To develop the stage show. So I think as time goes on, we'll probably kind of add more and more elements to make it more experiential.
Can't talk to you about your album, which was so cool, without mentioning a very specific person. What's the one of my favorite songs? I think is Black Smoke Over God's Country, or Black Fumes over God's Country. With a title like that, and you think about God in metal, people jokingly often say like, who would win between Lemmy and God? Nobody, because Lemmy is God. But I'm going to counter by saying maybe Arthur Rizk is God. One of the unsung hero. Well, I mean, people in the scene know very much who he is, but to the broader audience, is not a very well-known person. But if you look at all of the amazing records he's been involved in the last 10 years, few people have put their mark on metal as he has. How is that working with a guy like him?
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree, and I think the only reason more people don't know is because he's pretty humble and keeps to himself. And doesn't seem to want to be a public face.
Not even of his own band.
Yeah, for sure.
Bands.
It seems to be an ever-growing list. But no, he's incredible. And the reason we went to him, because we were discussing when we were kind of diving into the record process, like even early on in writing, that we wanted to go a different direction production-wise and make it a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit bigger sounding, but not fully synthetic, large studio situation. And we were kind of discussing some maybe like household names that have produced albums that we had been fond of for many years. But then the kind of question came to like, well, who's the guy now who's like at the top of their game?
Yeah.
Not resting on their laurels from things they did 15 years ago, but is like putting out their best material now. And that just Arthur seemed to be the kind of shining answer because he's worked with so many bands of so many different types and found a way to make them sound like them at their best level.
Yeah.
You know, he has his like ways of doing things, but it's not one of those situations of like the Arthur Rizk sound where you go there and he turns it into this thing. It's like he's very good at working with the bands to flesh out their sound because he's again the humble aspect of his personality carries over to how he works in the studio as well, where like he knows all sorts of things, but he's not sitting there, you know, telling like, "No, this is what you should do. What you should do." We have to ask him, be like, "I don't know. What do you think about this?" And then it would kind of over time his direction would come through. And yeah, the record definitely would not be what it is without working with him. And I'm very very happy with how it came out, and just can't really fathom it any other way now.
This has been a relentless schedule for you. This has been a very busy month, but it's not going to slow down. You've got some really cool shows coming up. What can we keep our eyes open for when it comes to the remainder of the year for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of right in the middle of a big tour cycle right now. We did the Enslaved tour in Europe, which was a dream come true. We're a little over 2/3 of the way through this US tour, and then we're going back to Europe in June for Mystic Fest, Hellfest, a tour with the Ruins of Beveras, who we love, and a tour with Dreadnought from Colorado, who's also an incredible band that we know quite well. After that, I think, you know, because of the relentless nature of the touring, we'll probably calm it down for a bit, but we're always working on something. We talked about working on some music, maybe not necessarily for the next full length, but, you know, maybe doing a bit of a detour that we're going to explore. So,
okay, interesting. I mean, the momentum is here, so you want to keep that going. Shane, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate taking a few minutes out of your very busy schedule in preparation for the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, looking forward to the show tonight. Can't wait. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Appreciate
there you go.
Time.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.